Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. We're live from Israel with your top headlines from across the region. It's currently 7 a.m. in New York and 2 p.m. here in Israel. I'm Deborah Klein, and these are the latest developments coming to you live from Israel. It's another day of ceasefire violations by Hamas in Gaza. The IDF this morning confirmed the elimination of 3 terror operatives in 2 different incidents. In both instances, armed terrorists crossed the yellow line into the IDF-controlled area as per the ceasefire, thus violating the agreement and actively threatening troops on the ground. In the south of the Strip, Kfir Brigade soldiers eliminated a Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorist by ordering airstrikes to target a gunman. A short time later, surveillance teams identified another terrorist approaching troops in southern Gaza. Soldiers of the Gaza Division's Southern Brigade opened fire and eliminated him. And in the north, the Air Force struck and killed a Hamas operative who the IDF says was preparing an imminent sniper attack against Israeli troops, publishing video footage of the strike. These recurring incidents reflect the current situation in Rafah. Dozens of Hamas terrorists still trapped underground, hiding in a tunnel on the IDF-held side of the Yellow Line. But for the first time in weeks, Israeli media reported a solution to the problem. In a proposal sent through mediators, Israel has offered the following: surrender, disarm, move to Israeli prisons, and later be released to Hamas-controlled Gaza. So far, the gunmen are refusing, and at this point, it's unclear whether Hamas chiefs can even get the message across to these trapped terrorists. And speaking of Hamas, in a disturbing development, Israel's defense establishment sends a sharp warning, claiming Hamas is quietly rebuilding its rule in the Gaza Strip, and much faster than many in the cabinet have realized. Senior defense officials told ministers that 13 of Gaza's 25 municipalities are back to full activity, once again run by Hamas. According to reports, Hamas police are redeployed at checkpoints, infrastructure is being repaired, and security sources say the organization has re-established its control in the minds of Gazans. Reports also confirm that Hamas has resumed checkpoint operations and is back to collecting taxes from truck drivers just as they did before the war. This rapid rebuilding is igniting new tensions between Jerusalem and Washington. The Trump administration is pushing ahead with the next phase of its 20-point plan for Gaza's day after, even as Israel warns that Hamas remains armed, entrenched, and deeply involved in local decision-making. With the U.S. struggling to assemble a multinational stabilization force, Washington is turning to interim solutions that Israel strongly rejects. Defense officials say the conclusion is clear. If the United States does not move to dismantle Hamas, Israel will have to. And according to the IDF, it's only a matter of time before a plan will have to be carried out. And the IDF's counterterrorism operation in Judea and Samaria is continuing and picking up speed. Just in the past night, IDF troops detained multiple suspects while searching for weapons in the Tubas area in northern Samaria. Raids were conducted in areas where intelligence suggests local terror groups attempted to establish presence. The operation details are now revealed. The raid begins with an airstrike directed by ground troops to isolate the area before allowing foot soldiers to enter alongside border police officers. The ground forces conduct searches and raids before detaining suspects and beginning interrogation. According to preliminary reports, the IDF and Shin Bet arrested or questioned 60 people. And in an interesting twist, among those detained and later released was Samir Basharat, the mayor of prominent Arab city Tammum. And joining me now to discuss all of these developments is Lieutenant Colonel in the Reserves Advocate Maurice Hirsch, Director of the Initiative for Palestinian Authority Accountability and Reform in the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, and the former Director of the Military Prosecution for Judea and Samaria. Maurice, thanks so much for joining.
Hi, good afternoon. Good morning.
So Hamas, as we reported, is regaining power in a lot of areas in Gaza. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but what can possibly be done to combat this at this point?
Well, so I think we're seeing two very different areas in the Gaza Strip. We're seeing the area which is controlled by Israel, the 52% outside of the yellow line, where we're seeing really the IDF operating against Hamas, making sure that the terrorists in the tunnels in Rafah are actually either eliminated or arrested or somehow neutralized. And in that entire area, the Gaza Strip is operating Hamas-free. Then you have the rest of the Gaza Strip, which, as we know, is seeing really a tremendous influx of humanitarian aid or so-called humanitarian aid, 4,200 trucks a week going into Gaza at the moment. And that is all being taken over by Hamas, which is reestablishing its control, reestablishing its governance systems throughout the Gaza Strip, again providing for the Gazan people and being seen, as your report accurately suggested, being seen by the Gazans as the person or as the organization that now runs the Gaza Strip. This is something that we cannot in any way accept. Israel needs to either ensure that the United States puts together that international force to actually disarm Hamas, or we need to do it ourselves, because the alternative is just waiting and unfortunately not being the last war with the Gaza Strip, but rather another one of the cycles of violence, which then give birth to another cycle of violence down the road as Hamas regains control.
Right, and I actually want to continue on and touch on that, because what do we know as of right now about Hamas's popularity inside Gaza? Because say we do manage to successfully demilitarize the Gaza Strip and remove Hamas from power, what's preventing their ideology from sticking around, especially considering the fact that the Hamas schools and the education system and the camps and all of their education is still very much prevalent? I mean, how can we prevent future attacks and protect Israel's security if the ideology remains?
And that's really an integral part of the day after in Gaza. It's not only getting rid of the terrorists. It's not only ensuring that Hamas no longer has any governance capabilities at all in the Gaza Strip, but it's ensuring that the entire school curriculum, that the culture, that the socialization of the Gaza Strip is changed fundamentally. Now, they don't have to become Zionists. They can be, and there are other options that can be implemented. We at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs suggested way back in December 2023 that possibly the change that could be made is to implement the UAE school curriculum, for example, a curriculum which teaches tolerance, which provides for an ability for coexistence. It doesn't have to be either violent genocidal terrorism or Zionism. There are middle paths, and those should be implemented. But first and foremost, we have to ensure that Hamas is eradicated, because otherwise nothing else can work.
Right. And, as you say, we also have reports from recent days that mediators, so Turkey, Qatar, and all the acting bodies have actually met in Cairo to discuss ways to also maintain the fragile ceasefire, but also to continue to phase 2 of the plan. We also have Al Jazeera reporting this morning that searches have begun in Zaytun to locate the slain hostages that remain in Gaza. They are, of course, Israeli hostage Ran Shmueli and Thai national Rin Sutisak. But do you think we'll be seeing these hostages returned at all? What is the incentive by Hamas to comply if they, keep getting away with these violations? And as long as we are in phase 1 and they can take their time to regroup, reestablish themselves, I mean, what's your take on all of that?
So I think we have to distinguish between the 2 points that you made. First and foremost, the Qatar and Turkey are not neutral actors. They are defenders of Hamas, and their continued involvement is of no benefit for either of the sides. It's only beneficial for Hamas itself. As regards the hostages, I've always argued that Hamas knows exactly where every single one of the hostages is. It isn't something which is random. And everything that they're doing now, the sporadic return of one hostage here, one hostage there, is designed to ensure that they continue putting pressure on the international community, and they put pressure on Israel as well. But really, they could have returned all of the bodies, all of the hostages, almost immediately. And really, everything that is being done now is just there to drag it out. They're seeing how resolute the will of the international community is, of Israel, of the United States, to ensure that they do comply. And as long as they give us a body every week, every 10 days, every 2 weeks, they believe that those lies that they're now going to Zaytun to possibly find another body will put off the inevitable. But in the meantime, they're using that time to reestablish themselves as the governance force in Gaza Strip and to prepare for the next cycle of violence. If we think that they are not now booby-trapping all of the rest of the buildings that haven't yet been attacked in preparation for the next cycle of violence, I think we're deluding ourselves. They are, unfortunately, a murderous group of genocidal terrorists, and their goal is simple: to destroy Israel, and they will do anything they can, even at the price, as we see it. But for them, really, the sacrifice of the lives of the Gazans, which they've been happy to throw into the path of any Israeli soldier on the way, that's part of their strategy. The more dead Gazans there are, the better it is for Hamas. That's how they see it, unfortunately. And that is, I believe, what we're going to see going forward.
But when the hostages, do get recovered and do come back, by the way, I happen to agree with you. I as well think that they know exactly where these bodies are and that it's all just a farce, that they're searching for them. But say that they do return the 2 remaining hostages. How do you foresee, is perhaps the IDF strategy or even Hamas's strategy changing? Because right now we're kind of in this, position of stalemate, of the waiting game, as you said. So how can we expect things to change once the hostages do come back?
Well, I fear that we won't see any tremendous change in what's going on in the Gaza Strip, at least in the near future. I think they will manage to drag out this hostage event for another few weeks, if not for another few months. I think there is great reticence, as we're seeing now in the international community, for any arms-bearing force to go into Gaza and to actually disarm Hamas. And they will use really the winter as an opportunity to regroup, to rebase themselves. We've seen the pictures from the Gaza Strip. There is no effective sewage, really provisions at all now in the Gaza Strip. And any rain means that fighting in that territory, continuing on with any military operations, at least for the next few months, will be particularly hazardous. And so I think that that's their plan, to make it through the winter, use the winter for A, to stop Israel from coming in and finishing off the job, B, to promote pictures around the world of the so-called suffering of the Gazan people, which is self-inflicted, inflicted by Hamas, of course, but in order to really garner some type of support for their continued resistance, as they call it. And then by the time we get to the spring of next year, everyone will have forgotten about the fact that Hamas is really returning to full force. The push to rebuild Gaza, even at the expense of leaving Hamas in control of a small area, will, I fear, be driven forward no matter what, and without their disarmament. And so I fear that we are going into a situation, unless some drastic decisions are made, we're going into a situation where we are just preparing for the next cycle of violence, and we'll see the winter as really cover for Hamas.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, I'd like to actually pivot slightly now, as we're getting in some new reports of airstrikes being reported in Jenin, that's in Judea and Samaria. And, as we just reported earlier as well, the counterterrorism, operations are continuing. Maurice, can you explain a little bit about that front? Why is this front, the Judea and Samaria front, being so heavily focused on right now? What's the real threat?
So we have to take into account that the same genocidal terrorist groups operating in the Gaza Strip are operating in Judea and Samaria as well. In Judea and Samaria, paradoxically, maybe, they enjoy even greater support than they do in Gaza. Hamas, as everyone I'm sure will recall, in 2006, won more votes in Judea and Samaria than it even did in the Gaza Strip. That's right. And so you have Hamas, you have Palestinian Islamic Jihad, you still have the Iranian influence still trying to push them forward towards carrying out more terrorist attacks. We saw just a few days ago, IDF reports of seizure of another large cache of arms designated for those terrorists operating in Judea and Samaria, being seized. So we have that constant push, and we saw obviously the terror attack just last week in Gush Etzion. this is something which is ongoing, and were it not for the active operations against terrorism in Judea and Samaria, I think we would be seeing ourselves more coming towards massive terror attacks than we've actually seen in the past. We saw just even part of the problem, obviously, being the fact that the Palestinian Authority is not only not operating against the terrorists, it's defending them and helping them. We saw with the fact that the terrorist who was killed just 2 days ago by the IDF forces after he had murdered 2 Israeli soldiers a year and a half ago, he had been in Palestinian Authority protective custody. That means they were looking after him to make sure that Israel wouldn't arrest him. We saw just 2 days ago also Palestinian security forces actively involved in gun battles against Israeli forces. So when you have the connection of the genocidal terrorist Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, together with and supported by the Palestinian Authority, it means that Israel really does have no choice rather than to take a very strong hand in Judea and Samaria, because they are planning the next October 7. Let us not fool ourselves about that. They are planning the next October 7 in Judea and Samaria. And the sooner we act to neutralize that threat, the better it will be for them and for us.
Absolutely. And, we are actually almost out of time, but just while I have you on, Maurice, I want to keep, expanding on what you said earlier about the Palestinian Authority, not only not working against these terrorists, but actually supporting them. Where do we stand right now with the quote unquote pay for slay, the system where the Palestinian Authority gives, physical money to terrorists after they commit terror attacks against Israelis? Where do we stand with that?
We have to listen to Mahmoud Abbas when he speaks in Arabic, when he says over and over again that if I'm left with just 1 penny in the coffers of the Palestinian Authority, I will pay it first and foremost to the terrorists. We just have to believe him. That's what he says. It's not just propaganda for him. That is his policy. That is Mahmoud Abbas's legacy going forward. And all the different lies that they put out in February, he issued a presidential order to cancel the payments. And then now we're seeing that he's issued another order to really stop the payments because they continued on despite his previous ostensible instruction. The Palestinian Authority pays salaries to terrorists because they see the terrorists as their employees. They are proud of them. They glorify them. They reward them. They incentivize them. Nothing in that will ever change. And there isn't a Palestinian leader on the horizon that will ever be able to change that after they've so entrenched it as part of their society. The only way forward is to dismantle the Palestinian Authority and to rebuild some type of other governance body there and that isn't made up of any of these people. The person that they're now touting to replace Abbas, Hussein al-Sheikh, is himself a terrorist. In 2001, suicide bombers on the way to attack in Jerusalem came into his office. They already had suicide belts. They already had everything they needed. And Hussein al-Sheikh reached into his office desk and pulled out 2 hand grenades and a wad of cash and said, "Go make sure that you kill the Jews." This is the person who is now going to be the next leader of the Palestinian Authority. This is untenable. If we see any future for the Palestinians, if we see any future for ourselves, we have to make that drastic change. It may hurt in the short time, but long term, it will save the lives of Palestinians and Israelis. And it's something that needs to be done sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. I completely agree with your last statement. I think it's no secret that Israel is kind of lacking in partners that we can actually work with in the region. But we are unfortunately out of time. Colonel Lieutenant in the Reserves Advocate Maurice Hirsch, thank you so much for speaking with us today and giving us your analysis.
Thanks for having me.
And in another development, Israeli intelligence has once again thwarted an Iranian plot against Israelis abroad. Now, according to reports, the Mossad, working closely with the African security forces, dismantled a Quds Force-led plan that targeted Israeli diplomatic sites in Uganda and Senegal. The plot involved a network of Pakistani and Bangladeshi agents operating from Iran, as well as local African recruits. They were tasked with surveillance, buying Western weapons, and preparing attacks. And authorities say the cell was caught before any damage could be done. Experts are pinpointing these cases as a show of the Islamic Republic's continuous investments in global terror operations. But Mossad and international partners have proven once again they can disrupt these plots early, maintaining Israeli security even far from home. Israeli intelligence has prevented a potential catastrophe in Africa, showing the global scope of the Islamic Republic's threats and Israel's ability to neutralize them. And we have breaking news reports. We have airstrikes coming out of Lebanon. The IDF is reportedly striking in Lebanon, and we don't have all of the details, but we will be sure to give them to you as soon as we have them. We have a slightly lighter and more positive and, dare I say, exciting development coming out of Israel that we'd like to discuss. 8 Israeli restaurants have been ranked among the very best in the world. Now, the ranking comes from the prestigious Liste, one of the most respected global gastronomic rankings, which included Israeli cuisine in their top 1,000 restaurants around the world. This is a major milestone for the Israeli food scene and a massive international win, with 7 of the restaurants who made the list located in Tel Aviv and 1 of them in Jerusalem. Topping the Israeli lineup is OCD in Tel Aviv, a tasting menu restaurant by chef Raz Rahav, which received the highest ranking in the country. Others include Mashia, Alina, Claro, Pastel and Papina in Tel Aviv, and Chakra in Jerusalem. And now we have the absolute pleasure of speaking with one of the chefs of one of these ranked restaurants. I'd like to welcome to the show Chef Ran Shmueli, who runs Claro in Sarona Complex. Claro follows a farm-to-table approach with a menu that's based on local seasonal produce. Ran, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So first of all, congratulations on this achievement, on this ranking. That's 77 points in the Liste ranking. Could you share, what this ranking means for you today, and maybe also discuss some of the challenges that Claro has had to face over the past 2 years of war?
First of all, we're really, really flattered, and it's a bit surreal to talk about restaurants after all these breaking news. It's a hard work without wars, and wars makes it really, really harder. And Claro in Tel Aviv is really it's a big business. We have feeding about 2 million people since we've been open 13 years ago, and we have 150 employees. And it's quite a project. We are connected with more than 10 farmers. And we have a guy, Shlomo, who is driving all over with our car in Israel, collecting all the good stuff. And we're trying to keep on the good job. I feel it's a mission to all over the world that Israel is not only about war and terrorism. It's also about good food and culture. And I believe, we don't need to have wars, but we need to eat. We can't live without eating. So this is, I feel really, I feel lucky, and I feel that we are recognized in the world, and it doesn't go without saying.
Right. So can you share a little bit about this process of the ranking? I mean, was there a critic who came into the restaurant? Did you know that this was happening? Did you expect it at all? Walk us through that.
No, actually, 1.5 years ago, I met La Liste vice president. She's a woman, and we were talking about it, and she said they're trying to give it from another perspective, to choose the restaurants, not like the Michelin guide or the other guides. And actually, I didn't understand exactly what they're doing. Of course, we don't know when or who came to the restaurant. I don't think somebody particular came for the restaurant. They are collecting all the reports, all the rates from people, from regular people, all the everything was that was advertising, pictures, and so on, all over the media. And since Claro is feeding a lot of people, I think that's, and if I may say, we are serving good food, and the atmosphere is amazing, and the restaurant is really beautiful, as you can see in the pictures. So here we are in the list. By the way, the second year already.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And the list that at least that came out this year, it's very interesting to me that 8 Israeli restaurants have made the list despite the wartime challenges. You say it's nice to know Israel not just for wars, but I think that that's incredibly impressive. And to me, that's a reflection of just sheer resilience. But perhaps there's just something great about Israeli cuisine, which is, often seen as this meticulous blend of cultures and therefore flavors. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the inspiration behind Claro is and what type of cuisine you specialize in?
Yes. You know, at my beginning of my career, I wanted to bring Europe and international food into Israel. And then one day I started to walk on in the market. I started in Carmel Market, and then I went to all over the Israel. I'm talking about 25 years ago when I was 2 years old. And I realized that there's so much in Israel that we can work with, and that's where it's all started. And I'm not sure it's Claro is not an Israeli restaurant. Claro is a Mediterranean restaurant, collecting all the goods from all the Mediterranean shore, at least one part of it, and one side of it, and and I don't know, as a chef, already I'm 41 years in the business, to see things are growing and then being served on the plates, that's the whole story. And I believe today a lot of people are doing good food, but you need to have a story. A story, by the way, is not only the food, is the plates you're serving in. We're trying to use as much as local artists to do our plates to and the atmosphere and the vibe, and of course the service, which is really homey. I think that's what helped us in the war, during the war, which unfortunately it's not over yet. By the way, we are kind of soldiers. We are here and we are always going to be here, and we're serving our customers. We opened in London 1 year ago. Uh, I'm not sure it's the best time in the year or in the world to open Israeli restaurants or Israeli connected restaurants in the world, but I think it's part of our missions as chefs, and if I may say, mature chefs, old chefs, uh, to spread all over our kitchen, our Mediterranean kitchen, which is a melting pot, of course, because people in Israel came from all over the world, and that's what makes the Israeli food or our part of the Mediterranean really, really interesting.
Absolutely. And like you say, the whole ranking system in and of itself is supposedly user-based. So that means that it was satisfied customers that put in the good word and ended up revealing this ranking.
I need to say thank you. I need to say thank you for those people who came to Clara during the last few years, which wasn't, let's not forget the coronavirus.
Mm,
And we went through a lot of problematic times, and the customer were there, we were there, and they really appreciate it. I was planting flowers when things were really
mm,
sad, but I believe we I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. And that's my part. I can't,
yeah.
I'm not in the army anyway, although I was in the
Mm.
army. And that's
But
that's part of
everybody
my
has their own role in the war, and everybody
exactly,
contributes in a
exactly,
certain way. And you're
exactly.
filling bellies and putting smiles on faces, so we absolutely love to see it. But we are out of time, so we do have to cut the interview short. Ran Shmueli, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. And just before we wrap up, just a quick reminder, it's Thursday, which means that Black Friday is tomorrow. So if you'd like to get some shopping done, now is the time. We're expecting big crowds at the mall, so just remember to stay safe and get those sales. That's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. I'm Deborah Klein, and thanks so much for watching.